Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. This channel is about living in New Zealand and I am Anna, who is running this channel but also website simplenewzealand.com about living in New Zealand. In today's video we are going to be discussing New Zealand houses, and we will compare New Zealand housing and houses to European houses and to houses in United States. I haven't been myself to United States, so I'm gonna be only talking from the information which I gathered in the internet and other videos I watched and other articles I have written. But overall, I think I have a good perspective of housing and houses in United States, so we can compare it also to New Zealand. Let's jump right into this with some interesting data about housing in New Zealand and home ownership. New Zealand home ownership, which we have currently in 2023, is the lowest as it ever have been since 50s. So currently about 66% of people own house in New Zealand, and I think it's pretty high, but it's the lowest. Actually, in United States it's also about 66%, and funny enough in Canada it's also 66%. So I don't know why people say that it's very low and it's the lowest since like last century, but it's still pretty high. So many people in New Zealand own homes compared to Europe, where in European Union it's pretty low actually, the home ownership rate. In Germany it's about 50%. In Austria it's 46%. In Denmark it's 41%. And in Switzerland it's 42%. In New Zealand actually a lot of people have their own house, so I don't know why it's so low. There is a reason for this, why at the moment the housing home ownership rates are the lowest, because house prices are rising every year and they are rising very fast. So at the moment the average house price in New Zealand is about 990,000 New Zealand dollars, which is pretty high. It's about 600,000 US dollars. If we compare it to United States, so the median house price in the whole United States in 2022 was 467,000 US dollars. But we all know that in United States, in many areas, you can actually buy a house for under 200,000 US dollars, which is more difficult in New Zealand. It would be probably a very rural area where you don't want to live. The main thing which is quite sad about housing in New Zealand, that you pay such a high price, but the quality isn't in the same level as houses in Europe and in the United States. The quality is lower. And if you want to have a high quality house, a new house, of course it will cost you more. So the type of housing in New Zealand is also pretty unique, because most people here live in a standalone or a semi-detached or detached houses. Many people also live in townhouses. Generally, people here live in their own house, standalone house with land, and you have space. This is not very common in Europe, where most people actually live in apartments. Of course, in New Zealand people also live in apartments, but I think it's rare. If you will compare the percentage, which I don't have the percentage, it's more rare if you will live in an apartment than you will live in a house. It's just typical when you move to New Zealand, you live in a house, or you are a New Zealander, you live in a house. And less people live in apartments. While in many countries, especially in Europe, it's just so common that you live in an apartment. And actually, when I looked at the house ownership and the type of housing which people have, so in New Zealand, most people, they own house, they don't own apartment. Apartments are more for investment property. While in Germany, for example, many people, they own apartment. So it's very, very popular to buy an apartment than to buy a house. So in Europe, many people buy apartments, and it's common. Although there are houses, but it's just typical that you will buy apartment. It's easier, it's more efficient, it's just easy. And in New Zealand, people buy houses. This is also was a big difference for me, and also the reason why I moved to New Zealand, because I love houses. I hate apartments, so that was logical. Besides standalone houses, the detached houses and semi-detached houses, there are some interesting property types in New Zealand which I haven't seen many in other countries, like, for example, lifestyle block or lifestyle property, where you would have a house and a piece of land, usually several hectares, like a hectare, a lot of land and a house. And many Kiwis, they kind of have this dream of lifestyle property, of at some point of their life to buy a house and to have a lot of land, to have a farm. Also, there are a lot of farms and people live on the farms. And there are plenty of homesteads. So homestead is like a small farm or garden when you have your produce. So you can have a few animals, but I think homestead, it's smaller than a farm, but there are so many of them. In Europe, it's, I think, pretty rare when you will have a livestock in your house. You know, if you have a house, you usually just have a house and maybe a small garden, but many people even don't have a garden. So they don't have plants there, they don't grow vegetables. I'm not talking about animals. And in New Zealand, it's so common for people just to have like some chickens, some sheep, couple of goats. It's just common and it's very funny. I think it's actually something that I also would love to do. I would love to have a couple of animals. I'm really looking to house sit somewhere where I can go to house sit a house and animals, to have farm animals. Would love to have this experience because I grew up in a farm in Russia where we had so many sheep and cows and dogs, chickens and hens and so many things, you know, so many animals. I would love to have this experience again. It's amazing. So let's get back to differences. The another significant difference between houses in New Zealand and houses in the United States is that New Zealand houses are smaller. Average house size in Auckland, 136 square meters, while in US, average is 212 square meters. And in Canada, average is 181 square meters. So houses in Auckland are super tiny if you compare it to houses in Canada and US. And it's just a fact. New Zealand, I think, they build houses more sustainably. There are a big trend of tiny houses and like super small houses, super practical houses. I think it's amazing. You don't have to have a lot of space. You don't need a lot of space. It's just a waste of money and actually resources and the energy, because you have to keep it warm, right? So I think it's even better that you build a small house, or the size of the house which you actually need. You don't have to have a lot of rooms. So I think it's a good point about New Zealand. And it's also the fact, so you have to keep it in mind. Another difference, very significant difference to New Zealand homes and homes in Europe, it's the heating. So the heating system here, it's a heat pump, the most common one. Heat pump is air conditioning. Pretty much just switch on the warm air, and in winter you use it as the warm air, you use it for a warm air, and in the winter you use it for a cold air. For statistical data, about 47% of households in New Zealand use heat pumps. The second common heating method is electric resistant heaters. It's about 44% of people who use it, and it's mainly the ground, like a floor heating, which is more expensive, and it's getting more popular, but you will also see it more in expensive houses and newer houses. In older houses, it's pretty rare to see the floor heating, but it's growing and it's pretty good. So we will have in the future probably more houses with floor heating. This is the best way. And the third most common way people heat houses with wood burners. I have it in my bag. So about 32% of people will use burners on a regular basis to warm up the house. That's very different because I never have seen a wood burner in Europe. I never have seen ever wood burner in normal house. Like, I mean, maybe in the village somewhere in Russia, not in a modern house. And in New Zealand you will see wood burners. Another thing also about heating, I noticed that in a bathroom in New Zealand you have to turn on the heat. you will see there the button. If you don't turn on the heat in the bathroom, you will not have hot water. So I also haven't seen it yet in other countries. The another big difference to New Zealand homes and to other homes in Europe and in US, it's that floors are carpeted. So when you walked in a house, they usually have carpet in most rooms. Usually kitchen is a normal wooden floor or wherever they have, but all rooms have carpets. I was like, what's this? It's so interesting because, like, yeah, I never have seen it. I think it's more comfortable, it's more comfy, makes like a homey atmosphere. But in another sense, like, how do you wash it? I know that I will have to move to Christchurch and probably I will rent a house where I will have a carpet. And I'm like, how am I gonna wash it if I split something on it? I don't know why people have it, but basically it's very common. Like, so many houses I see, I'm looking also for properties now to rent a house, and most houses, they have carpets. Tell me, is it normal? Is in your country there are the carpets on the floor? Because I haven't seen it yet. One important point about houses in New Zealand everybody should know is that actually they build differently than houses in other countries. They built out of timber frames, so it's wooden house, so it's less solid, less stable as you used to, because New Zealand is prone to earthquakes and other natural disasters, and every house has to be built according to the rules so they can withstand earthquakes. European houses, they built with bricks, they built with concrete, with stone. I mean, it feels differently. And in New Zealand, houses are, I think, also less insulated for that reason. They are colder, of course. This is just a must-known fact that houses are just colder. And also that reason because they are tinier, they are thinner, they are less insulated, but people insulate them more because there were several rules which are forcing house owners to insulate houses. For example, it's mandatory to insulate at least like a roof and a floor. There are some rules and regulations placed to that, but still it's not that everything is insulated, and there are many instances when houses are not well insulated. And people are very struggling, especially people who moved to New Zealand from abroad. Also because the air is more humid here, you will see like condensations on windows in older houses. So there could be plenty of issues, including mold. It's a factor in New Zealand. It's also because of this climate, but also because of how people build their houses, especially older houses. If it's like a house from 50s or 70s, it probably will need some more insulation and some work on it. Another difference and thing which also adds up to this problem of cold houses is that houses here are not double glazed or triple glazed. Many houses are double glazed windows. Because some houses have also like windows, like you see here. It's like a floor, right, like a balcony, but it's a window, so you need to have a double glazing. Some also have triple glazing, but some houses have single glazing. Imagine, it's very tiny window. Of course, it would be cold, and also the isolation, the noise isolation is not existent there. The more glazing you have, the better noise insulation. And I have heard that houses in Wellington, because they are so old, so if you haven't been Wellington, it looks like San Francisco, because houses are like villas, and they mostly built in last century, of course, like 50s, 70s, 80s. They have like single window glazing, and they also not insulated. It's a horror. I have been to Wellington and I have considered to moving to Wellington, and I was looking for houses, and I have seen that so many houses are like this. They are old. I bet they are cold, and I bet it's gonna be cold in the winter, and when it's windy, it's gonna be triple cold. So I'm not jealous to people who live in Wellington. Another difference I noticed to New Zealand homes, to European homes, is that most houses here, they have a wooden fence around them. So if it's standalone house, it usually has a fence. And I lived in Germany. I reckon I haven't seen houses with the fences. It's so uncommon in Europe, in many countries in Europe, to build fences around the houses. Here it's so common. You will have like a small garden, like a small backyard, and it's all will be fenced with a wooden fence. I don't know, I don't like this wooden fences. I would myself, I would not build that. I would not prefer that. But people do this. So if you are moving, for example, to city like Christchurch or Auckland or wherever you're going to live in a city, you can expect that you will have wooden fences around you. Also about gardens, gardens here are smaller, and you have here more like a backyard, so not that much of the front yard. But the gardens are usually, backed, so it's not to the roadside. And then we have their fence. So if you're renting the house in New Zealand, you have to be prepared that it's gonna be empty. Most houses are rented empty, and you will have a kitchen usually. It's even included the stove. Sometimes it includes wash machine, and in some cases even the fridge. But you will not have anything else. I mean, it's usual, right? There are so many countries in the world where you don't have any furniture when you move in. But in other countries, I live, for example, in Serbia, it's very common to have furnished house. In Russia, it's very common to rent a furnished house. In New Zealand, apparently you will have to take it all with you, or you're gonna sell your furniture when you move out, which I find a bit more convenient. You have furnished house, but it's more expensive. And in some cases you don't like the furniture, but you have to take it. And on the other side, if you take unfurnished house, you have to furnish it yourself. It also costs money, it costs time, it costs effort, but at least you will have a furniture which you like. But for me, the downside, I know that I'm gonna be probably moving out from Christchurch. I'm not gonna live there like 10 years. And then I understand that I have to do something with the furniture. Don't expect that you will get furnished house easily. Most houses are unfurnished, but some rental agencies were usually, so the furnished houses were usually managed by rental agencies, and they have these options. For example, in Christchurch, there are one real estate agency where they only have furnished properties, for example. So you might contact one property agent and they will help you out with this. Another big difference I noticed about houses here, that they don't have a basement. So New Zealand houses are not built with the basements. Maybe because of the earthquakes or other reason, but we don't have it here. In the United States and in Europe, basements are common. Even apartments have basements. It's normal when you have a big apartment building and there is the basement apartment, or you have a house and you have a basement and you rent a basement, or you use it for storage or wherever. But in New Zealand there are no basements, so just keep it in mind. What else I find super interesting is that we have a post boxes on the road. In Europe, post box is always in your house. So you will have you just put it in your house, it's normal. But in New Zealand, it's so far away. It's like if you have your house somewhere, like not on the road, a bit further away from the road, your post box is always on the road, because like a postman will drive by, right? They stop and they just put it there. They don't go to your house. I find it super funny because there are just like a bunch of post boxes in the roads usually, and often they are colored or they have decorations, like some maybe children, they do some decorations there. It's always like you're driving in the road, even if you're driving somewhere like a highway, there would be post boxes, because people living somewhere close to highway, and then they will have their post box, but their house probably like 500 meters away, but they would have post box by the highway. It's just something what I didn't used to, so it's something different. Also, tell me, is in your country post box in a road or in your house? Or how is it in US? I don't know, but in New Zealand, your post box is always in the road. So another difference which I noticed, but maybe it's not overall New Zealand or not all houses, but where I have been, I already switched a few houses, and there was always slow internet. I don't know what's going on here, but I suppose it's an internet provider. It depends which you use and depends which probably package you have. The last difference I noticed is about power plugs. So overall we have here different power plugs. It's a type I, so it has 3 holes. And also you have to turn it on. There is a switch. So if you don't turn it on, it's not gonna work. At least in Europe, I know maybe in US you have to also turn it on. But in Europe, you don't have to do it. There is no switches on power plugs. Yeah. So that was also the difference, and that's pretty much it, I think. Overall, houses are just different, and I think it takes time to get used to, and it all depends, I think, from house to house. Some houses are better than others. I have been to a few which were really not comfortable, which I don't want to live in. Some more newer houses are very comfortable, warm, well insulated. You know, it all depends on a particular house. So make sure to shop around if you rent or if you buy. If you buy, it's super crucial. You have to hire a professional who can check the property. Okay, and the last difference to New Zealand house is that every house here is different. What I used to in Europe is that every second house or every house is kind of the same, because in many countries they impose the law that you have to build a house the same color, the same style as the house next to you. If you drive into a city or village or community, so there would be like approximately the similar houses. But in New Zealand, we probably don't have this law. You can basically build the style and design the color which you want. And I love it, absolutely love it, because it's so creative. So many different houses, and you have such a big choice on houses, their look and design. It's just amazing that they don't force you. Be like the next ship next to you. We all the same, and we have the same color and the same interior and exterior. In New Zealand, you can be creative. Many people actually build tiny houses. Also, tiny houses are very popular here, and so people decide just to live in the middle of nowhere with a small tiny house. They can create wherever they want. I never have seen tiny houses. Now, maybe in Scandinavia, in Sweden, there was like a trend of tiny houses as well, but not like in Central Europe. It's like really, really uncommon. I think it's a really great place if you want to build a house, or if you want, for example, buy a house but make it totally different, renovate it, destroy, again build. It's perfect, because like government would not stop you and would not tell you, okay, build this and not this. Of course, you need to follow the rules according to safety structure, etc. But overall, you have freedom here. And that's all for housing in New Zealand. Overall, I love it, and I'm really looking forward when I can buy property here. It's a great place to live in the nature, great place to have animals, pets, wherever you want. Let me know what differences you have noticed to New Zealand houses and your houses, houses where you grew up or where you currently live. I only have experience from European houses, but I already see the big differences. I will see you next time in the next video on this channel.